Hola. We've spent the last, few weeks on really learning to conjugate verbs in the present subjunctive in that kind of weirdo plus K plus, second clause in present subjunctive format, okay? And so now we're going to focus a little more on el subjuntivo o el indicativo. So when do we use the present subjunctive in a second clause or an independent clause, which is, the really kind of appropriate way to call it? Or when do we use the present indicative? Because there are certain situations, of course, in which the subjunctive is not required and the indicative or regular present tense is. And so we're going to start off today at the very top of your notes packet, even before we get into the slides a bit, with a brief review of what we already know how to do, the ya podemos section. So ya podemos conjugar verbos en el presente del subjuntivo. The majority of us seem to be pretty proficient when it comes to conjugating verbs in the present subjunctive. Usar el subjuntivo con oraciones weirdo, más que, más el presente del subjuntivo. So some of us are still more comfortable with this weirdo plus K plus present subjunctive form than others, but we're getting there, if that makes sense. We're all on the path to getting there. We have the steps, we have the tools to do what we need to do. And the most important thing to remember as far as this goes, though, is the ya sabemos que, las dos cláusulas, the two clauses, which is the appropriate grammatical term, or the dos partes, two parts, de estas oraciones tienen sujetos diferentes. So every single sentence you've seen that requires the present subjunctive has had a first clause with one subject, and then after the word que, you've had the second clause with a different subject. So for example, yo quiero que tú escuches los apuntes. I want you to listen to the notes. So that's where we are now, okay? This is the formula we've been following. This is what we've been getting used to over the last few weeks. We're going to do a quick review here of weirdo, okay? So the W, wants and wishes, E for emotions, I for impersonal expressions, R for recommendations, D for doubts, and well, that's bold-faced. That's all caps there. We'll get to that in a minute. And then O for ojalá. Sorry, you can hear one of my dogs in the background there, playing around in my office. And the reason why the doubts is all caps here is because, as you can see on your notes packet, we're going to be focusing our attention really on the doubts, the D for these notes, okay? So we need to keep a couple of things in mind as we get going, okay? So first off, es necesario recordar que usamos el presente del subjuntivo con expresiones de duda más que cuando hay cambio de sujeto. So remember that for the time being, the number one rule of the subjunctive is that you only use it when you have that first clause with one subject plus the word que plus the second clause with a different subject. Okay, so we use the present subjunctive with the expressions of doubt and que when there's a change in subject. So for example, if I were going to say, yo no creo que ustedes quieran hacer la tarea, I don't believe that you all want to do the homework. Most of you do it, doesn't mean you want to. That would be an expression that would require the present subjunctive because you've got that yo no creo, I don't believe, plus the word que for that. And then the subject changed to ustedes quieran hacer la tarea. You all want to do the homework, okay? And you'll notice that the expressions on the bottom of the first page are identical pretty much to the ones in your initial notes packet, but they are here for a brief reminder, and I would strongly recommend that you take a moment to write them down again, okay? A couple of things to remember, okay? Cuando no usamos el subjuntivo, we don't use it cuando hay dos cláusulas y no hay cambio de sujeto, okay? Típicamente podemos usar el presente del indicativo or el presente regular. So if you have two separate clauses and they each have the same subject, we're typically going to use the present indicative, otherwise known as the regular present tense, okay? So, por ejemplo, we have estamos felices que vamos a mirar una película la semana que viene. We are happy that we are going to watch a movie next week. B. La señora duda que ella sabe mucho de la química. Senora doubts that she knows a lot about chemistry. True, I know nothing about chemistry. Okay? C. Los estudiantes esperan que no tienen que estudiar el subjuntivo hoy. The students hope that they don't have to study the subjunctive today, and I apologize if that is the case, and I am crushing those dreams, at least for the moment. And D. Yo no creo que tengo que practicar el vocabulario. I don't believe that I have to practice the vocabulary. So as you can see here, we do have these sentences, and they each have the same subject in both the first clause, the one before K, the primary clause, and the secondary or dependent clause, the one after K. The biggest thing you need to be aware of here, however, is que no usamos el subjuntivo con expresiones de subjuntivo. Expresiones de certidumbre, expressions of certainty. So as it says in your notes, cuando no hay duda, if there is no doubt, usamos el presente del indicativo, aun si hay cambio de sujeto. So if you are using an expression in which you are saying that you believe something, you know something, you are certain about something, something is true, you are always going to use the regular present tense in that second clause, or the present indicative, otherwise known as the regular present tense, even if there is a change in subject, okay? So there are certain expressions at the bottom of page 2 that always require the present indicative, even if there is a change in subject. So we have a few examples here for you. Actually, sorry, before we have the examples, we have the expressions here. I apologize, okay? So the expressions that always require the present indicative in the second clause if you see them in the first clause. I'm sorry, I completely skipped over on my paper. All right? So we have saber que, which is to know that, and saber, remember, is to know facts or information. Pensar que, to think that. Estar seguro de que, to be sure or to be certain that. Es cierto que, it is certain that. Creer que, to believe that. Opinar que, to have the opinion that, or to be of the opinion that. Es verdad que, it's true that, or es seguro que, it's sure, or another way of saying it's certain that. Okay? So a few examples for you here just so you can kind of see. On página 3, bottom of página 2, top of página 3. So you have letra E. La señora sabe que ustedes pueden conjugar verbos en el presente del subjuntivo. Señora knows that you all can conjugate verbs in the present subjunctive. The reason why you use pueden, regular present tense there, is because la señora sabe, that expresses that I know something, okay? For me, it's a statement of truth. F. Nosotros creemos que la clase tiene que jugar matamoscas para practicar. We believe that the class needs to play matamoscas to practice. Once again, change in subject, but you have that statement of belief, that statement of certainty in the first clause. Therefore, you need to use the regular present tense or present indicative in the second clause. Hey, yo pienso que todos nosotros vamos a pensar mucho en los estereotipos. I think that we all are going to think a lot about stereotypes. Statement of I think in the first clause. In the second clause, then, we have the nosotros, but even though you've got the subject change, since the first clause expresses I think, you need to use the present indicative in the second clause. H. Es verdad que los estudiantes van a criticar las telenovelas. It's true that the students are going to critique soap operas. And E. Es cierto que yo voy a estar muy ocupada este fin de semana. It's certain that I'm going to be very busy this weekend. Usually I'm very busy. See? So keep that in mind. Ha ha ha. So, as far as the notes go, what you need to do now is give the example at the bottom of page 3 a try, and we'll be spending some time with this over the next week or so. Gracias.